Most isekai stories are about making friends, having fun, or defeating bad guys. There are also some isekai stories that have morally gray protagonists, like those in stories featuring someone who is reincarnated as a monster, or those villainous manhwas that are just everywhere. Being a decent person or a mischievous monster is nice and all, but what about someone who is truly evil, someone who goes out of their way to do the morally wrong thing? Well, here are a few isekai stories that are about truly wicked people. Failure Frame. I became the strongest and annihilated everything with low-level spells. Opens with the protagonist, Memori, stuck in a foreign world with his classmates. They were summoned by the goddess of war, and she wants them to save the world for her. Classic isekai tropes. After giving the students abilities, Memori receives the worst ones, and because of this, the goddess tells him to become an outcast and leave his classmates, who are the only connection he has to his previous life. Memori protests this decision, and even his class president stood up for him, but this was ineffective, and Memori became a pariah. This marked the start of his descent to villainy. Memori has 3 skills: Paralyze, Poison, and Sleep. He really only uses the first 2 in order to torment those he encounters. If he uses Sleep, he could decrease the misery his victims suffer, but he doesn't often do this. Even after ending the lives of humans, Memori says he feels nothing regarding the experience. This apathetic attitude is the driving force behind his immoral actions. After meeting a good influence, Memori tries to be a better person, and he does this through his actions. But the thing is, while Memori tries to do the right thing, he often does it in an immoral way, which is why I would consider him to be evil. The manga itself actually isn't too bad. While a lot of revenge isekai stories are very similar, this one really stood out to me, as Failure Frame draws on story and art elements from the early 2000s, which I appreciated. Similarly, a lot of isekai stories ignore the fact that the protagonist is transported to another world after the first few chapters, but the isekai premise stays relevant throughout the story. There's also no creepy harem or forced romance, which allows the story to focus on what truly matters: revenge. In this story, Memori is more of an anti-hero than anything, but does that make him truly evil? I don't know. He operates in an odd gray area. Although I am unsure if Memori is truly evil, I can confidently say that the protagonist of the next manga is a true villain. The hero laughs while walking the path of vengeance a second time is about revenge, but the protagonist is a lot more insane. In The Hero Laughs, all Kaito wants to do is go home. After defeating the demon lord or whatever, Kaito returns to the kingdom that summoned him in order to be teleported back to Earth, but not everything goes as planned. Because he's a powerful being from an alien world, the kingdom's princess plans to dispose of Kaito. She traps Kaito with her soldiers, and after informing him of the tragic circumstances surrounding his summoning, she ends Kaito's life. For context, in The Hero Laughs, to summon someone to another world, a bunch of people from both worlds need to be sacrificed, because the fantasy world initiated the sacrifice. All those around Kaito when he was transported were sacrificed as well. So, after learning that everyone he loved back on Earth had been sacrificed by the princess, he was slain. But his life wasn't over quite yet. Through some weird system, Kaito received a second chance at life in this new world. The first thing Kaito did when he woke up was defeat the guards in the summoning chamber and beat up the princess. He carves a message to the royal family into her back, informing them that he will return one day to destroy the kingdom. He then leaves and heads towards a village, where he focuses on leveling up and getting his old skills back. He also goes to purchase a slave, who he intends to use to farm experience. While looking for a slave, he finds a girl who had been betrayed by her best friend. This betrayal results in the girl's family being wiped out, and is how she ended up being a slave. Kaito recognizes revenge in the girl's eyes, and after freeing her, they form a pact in order to help each other get revenge. The girl, whose name is Minaris, immediately uses her abilities to end the lives of all the other slaves by turning them into goblins and forcing them to eat poisoned food. Both Kaito and Minaris are pretty horrible people. There are only a few chapters of this manga out, so I can't really say too much about it. The art and paneling are pretty average, but because of how little of the manga's out, I really just don't know what else to say. I guess this is a preliminary review, so if The Hero Laughs turns out to be horrible, then don't blame me. While and The Hero Laughs take themselves a little bit too seriously, FFF Class Trashero is the complete opposite. When he was a student, King Kansu was summoned to another world in order to defeat the Demon King. For 10 years he was used, manipulated, lied to, and abused by his comrades and peers. Because of this, right before he enters the Demon King's lair, he gets revenge on his comrades and ends their lives. After defeating the Demon King, he is now excited to return to Earth. He lost 10 years of his life in a world full of pain and hurt, and it is now all over. Or at least, that's what Hansu thought. Instead, he is greeted with a report card informing him that he had failed as a hero, and that he shouldn't have slayed his comrades, despite Hansu's actions being pretty justifiable. Whoever is in charge of this whole isekai thing makes Hansu redo his heroic journey. On his second attempt, Hansu is extremely rude to his peers, and he isolates himself in order to prevent the abuse from happening again. He also puts himself in situations that would allow him to slay those who had wronged him in his previous life. Although Hansu is pretty vile in the first arc, he only gets more evil from there. In the second arc of the story, a new character character is introduced. This guy's like the typical isekai protagonist. He was excited to be isekai'd, and instead of wanting to go back to Earth, he intended to spend the rest of his life in the new world. This is obviously very selfish, as if the new guy didn't intend to fight the Demon King, a whole bunch of people would be wiped out. Not only is this guy selfish, but he's a creep as well. His phone case is literally a video game character in a skimpy outfit, and instead of introducing himself as his real name, he told other people to call him Sieg, which was the name of his favorite video game character. Sieg starts drama for no reason, tries to build a harem, and tries to be the stereotypical isekai protagonist. He really thinks he's Kirito or something. All of this is balanced out by what happens to Sieg. I obviously won't spoil it, but what goes down between Hansu and Sieg is just wretched. I think what makes Trashero stand out to me is how the protagonist treats the video game world like an actual video game. While a lot of other isekai protagonists treat the video game-esque world they live in like a second Earth, Hansu treats it like an actual game. He grinds, he speedruns, he does it all. There are other isekai protagonists that treat the world they are in like a game as well, but because Hansu has no emotional attachment to the game he's in, he does a lot of immoral things. As Trashero progresses, it does kind of fall off a bit, but the art remains solid throughout the story. As you can probably tell, Trashero is a modern manhwa, or Korean comic, so the formatting is a bit different than your usual book style. That does it for evil isekai protagonists. If you know of any more, please let me know. I also failed to mention a few of the more perverted ones, like Redo of a Healer, but I'm not really a fan of that kind of thing. It's like there's evil, and then there's weird evil, if that makes any sense. I also know that I probably sound deranged for hyping up all these stories centered on evil characters, but I don't like these stories because the protagonists are evil. I like them because they're just different from the usual isekai story. Thank you for all of your support on my previous video. Later, gamers.